today we're working on chapter 2, so negative numbers, but today we're working with inequalities. So writing inequalities and comparing inequalities are the focus for today. So we're going to start by comparing them. We probably should talk about the fact that an inequality is when you're going to be looking at two numbers that are not equal. One is going to be bigger than the other. As we look today, inequalities, you're going to be using the symbols greater than or less than right there. And you can see that we have a number line. We can use the number line to help us identify these. So as we look, you can use the number line to compare if it's greater than or less than. So there's a really big caution right here. So let's read what that says. This is kind of identifying the mistakes that could be made, so let's pay attention to those. When you compare negative and positive numbers, so when there are two different kinds of numbers and you're comparing, you want to really think about the sign in front of the number, and then whichever is furthest to the right on the number line. So these are bigger, and these are smaller. The ones that are further to the right are bigger, so you're identifying which one is bigger, okay? Easy to tell when it's positive or negative. A positive is always going to be bigger than a negative. But the tricky part gets to be when you're comparing two negatives. So let's start with negative 15 and negative 6. Okay, first of all, negative 6 is right here. Negative 15 is not even on the chart. It would be around over there. So the question is, which one is further to the right? That would be negative 6. So negative 6 is bigger. Okay, negative 20 and negative 23. Okay, the key here is to remember the one that's closest to 0 is going to be, when it's a negative, bigger. So if you think about it, this is 20 and 23. Okay, 20 is the closest to 0. So on a negative, closer to 0 means it's further to the right, which means it's going to be bigger. So negative 20 is bigger. Negative 30 and negative 3, okay? Negative 3 is going to fall right here. Negative 30 is going to be way over here. Further to the right is negative 3. Okay. 0 and 19. I'm going to get my creative pen here. I'm going to make it a star. So 0 right there. Negative 19 is going to be way left. We know 0 is bigger. Here we have two positives. We have 12 and we have 31. We know 31 is bigger. With 18, it's negative and a positive. The positive is always bigger, so positive 46 is bigger. Now, the thing that's a little weird is with the bigger numbers, or with positives, the further away from 0 you are, the bigger you are. With negatives, the closer you are to 0, the further away you are. So that's really, we're working with opposite numbers, and those are really opposite ideas. So if it's a negative, the closer to 0 it is, the bigger it is. That's understanding that people have difficulty with. Let's continue on. All right, the second thing of what we're going to do today is really make sure we're understanding these things. We're going to be comparing things and we want to understand them. So here it gave us a table. This is trying to make it real world for us. So temperatures in Alaska. While we don't live in Alaska, that is relevant to our country. It's relevant to temperatures relevant to us. So if we look at this table, we have July, August, September, October, November, December, and we have the date or the temperatures of that time. So here it says October's lowest recorded temperature. So I'm going to go to October of negative 48 is lower than November's temperature. So November was negative 61. Okay, that is actually not lower. This would be higher than. The temperature was higher if it's negative 48. And then we can compare these two using negative 48 is greater than negative 61. Okay? Let's look at another example. This one's different because it's talking about elevation. You can see we have Death Valley, we have Lake Assaul, we have Driscoll Mountain. So things that are high, things that are low, we're comparing them. So the elevation of Driscoll Mountain is negative 282. That is greater than or higher up than Death Valley. Oh no, that was Death Valley. Sorry, let's refresh that. Okay. Driscoll Mountain is 535 feet, which is bigger than or higher than Death Valley's elevation of negative 282. Okay, so you can write this as an inequality. I would just always start with the one that appears first. So 535 is greater than negative 282. We're going to learn how to use those words instead of saying greater than, higher than. Okay, Lake Assaul is negative 509 feet. That is less than Driscoll Mountain's elevation of 535. So here we're just going to write the inequality. Negative 509 is less than 535. We want to keep it in the same order, and we want to use the words less than. We want it to be the less than symbol. In a little bit, we're going to work backwards, and instead of giving us, they're going to give us this, and we're going to put it into words. But for right now, we're going to go for there. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice. We're going to look at what it's saying, and we're going to figure out, okay, what should this look like in terms of writing an inequality itself. All right, as we begin to practice, here it wants to write an inequality for each statement. So it has words, so we're going to use greater than or less than, okay? So it says 0 degrees Celsius is warmer than negative 5 degrees Celsius. So I have my numbers, my labels. I need to decide which is bigger, okay? So I have 0 and I have negative 5. If it's warmer, that means on a thermometer it's going to be higher up, which means this one's bigger. So 0 degrees Celsius is warmer than or greater than negative 5 degrees Celsius. Elevation, number 2. The elevation of the Valdez Peninsula is negative 135 feet, okay, which is less than the elevation of negative 92 feet. So 131 feet and negative 92 feet. Okay, it's less than. It's lower in the ground if it's negative 135. That means that negative 92 is higher up. Okay, now we want to use other words. So we're going to write the statement about the inequality. So we're actually writing words. We're not going to use greater than or less than. I would like us to use other words. If we're talking temperature, warmer, colder. Okay, if we're talking elevation, we're going to use like deeper, higher, things like that. Okay, so negative 61 degrees Fahrenheit is colder than, it's less, it would be lower, colder than negative 47 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, number 4, we're talking about elevation and how deep something is. So we have negative 520 feet, and we have a negative 893. So this is not as deep as, it's higher, is higher than negative 893 feet. I really like not as deep as. I like that better. but this is another example of how you could write it. So I like it written not with greater than or less than, but what are other words that mean that? That's what I want to look at. Okay, let's see what else we have. Okay, we have some independent practice. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to pause the video and go ahead and write answers up for 5, 6, 7, and 8. Know that 7 and 8, you're probably going to have slightly different answers than me, but I'll give you other examples of how it could look. But 5 and 6 should look the same. So go ahead and pause and try it, and then resume the video when you're ready. All right, so here you can see the answers to the independent practice. For number 5, I have negative 22 degrees Celsius is less than negative 4 degrees Celsius. Colder means it would be lower on our thermometer. Okay, for number 6, I have negative 36,200 feet is less than negative 24,442. This one is a bigger number. It's higher up, where this one, 36,000, is lower in the ocean. It's the deepest part. It's farther down. Okay. Number 7, I chose, instead of saying higher up, this time I said not as deep as. So negative 45 feet is not as deep as negative 80 feet. And then for the last one, negative 436 degrees Fahrenheit is colder than negative 271 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's some examples for you. Let's talk really quickly. We probably should have done this first, but let's talk about the visuals. First of all, this is going to be our bigger numbers. The bottom is going to be our smaller numbers. Okay, the same when we're digging with elevation. Your bigger numbers are going to be above ground. And then our smaller numbers are going to be at the bottom. The lower in the ground we go, the deeper it is, the smaller. Okay? And then we're going to talk about some other words that we could use. Okay, if it's up here, we could use higher. We might see warmer. If it's a smaller number, we are going to see maybe colder, lower. Okay, with elevation, we might see higher, we might see lower, we might see deep. Okay, what else could we see? High, low, deep. I'll think on that one and see what else we can think of. Here, when we're talking about ATMs, we're looking for probably deposit, withdraw, so this would be a negative, this would be a positive. Deposit means put in, withdraw means take out. I think those are good starters. Now that you have an understanding of these words and how you can use them, maybe go back and look at where you're seeing some of those. So warmer, colder. This is talking about greater than, less than. This is talking about higher and lower of temperature. So just be aware of those words and how they're used in the positive and negative, the language of numbers. That's lesson 2.1, day 2.